Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to the first episode of Transfer Talk for the summer transfer window. We're starting now because it's the international break. There's nothing else to do. And Arsenal are going to be linked with everybody, anybody's mama, for the next 4 or 5 months. So let's just go ahead and dive in now. And I think this is an interesting summer window that we're going to get to because we will have Champions League again. And since Arteta has been manager, we haven't had Champions League, and the Cronkies have done a really good job of backing him. But I wonder what backing him looks like, knowing that we're going to be fighting on all four fronts next season and playing in the Premier um, uh, Cup competition next season. So I'm excited. I'm excited. And hearing about players wanting to re-sign with Arsenal, extend their deals and commit their future to the Arsenal is also really exciting. We're going to talk about Bukayo Saka's new deal, as well as Lindstrom. We're going to talk about Jesper Lindstrom. There's been some information regarding him, Rasmus Hojlund, Balogun, and Declan Rice. So if you guys are excited, ready to go, let me know in the chat how your international break has gone so far and how you're feeling going into this summer transfer window, potentially as Premier League champions. Let's see. A cow says, "Where have you been? No time to do this job." I am not in England right now. I am in California handling some really important business, not really relating to football at all, but just, things in my personal life. So I have kind of taken a couple of days off to try to get those things together. And now that I've, gotten to a place where I'm like, okay, cool, now I can focus on YouTube. You guys know how I am. I don't like to come on here and do shows when I'm not 100% or I'm rattled or, stressed out about stuff that are outside of it because it affects me on camera. So I'm sorry I haven't been here for like the last week or so, but I am back and hopefully you guys will forgive me. Tony says, SK, let's go. Look at the caliber of player we are linked to with compared to the type of player we were linked to over the past few years. It's different. It's definitely different. I'm excited. And then also because things have worked out so well with Arteta and Edu over the last couple of windows, I feel a lot more relaxed. When the first couple of windows, it was very much like, well, what are they doing? Why would they do that? That doesn't make sense. I don't know this player. I've never seen this player before. And now it feels like we can relax a little bit and kind of trust them a little bit more. I know some people trusted them from the beginning, but it took me some time. John Donut says, "Hey, Jess, hello to you as well." Matt G says, "Let's do this." Hey, Jess, hello to you as well. Matt C. Wilder says, "Hope all is well." I know C. Wilder has been here since the beginning. Matt's been here since the beginning. Tony and a couple of others that are in the chat. You guys will recognize this background if you guys have been here since the beginning. Yeah. DeRozier says, "When we win the league, why can't we go for Bellingham?" I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans talking about we should go big for Bellingham and kind of skip over the Rice and Caicedos and go straight for the big fish. What I'll say about the Bellingham situation is that I do think to be able to land a player like Bellingham, you will probably need to be the type of club that he will feel. Well, there's a couple of things. Either have the childhood connection to, I think that's one thing, or a legacy club that has been over the past couple of years challenging for the Champions League as well as their domestic title. And so I think Bellingham is in that category where, for an Arsenal, if we were to get him, we needed to get him before he went to Dortmund. It's really difficult for me to see him wanting to come to Arsenal, not because Arsenal haven't improved, but we haven't really shown that we have that European pedigree, as well as, the ability to also challenge for the title at the same time. And that's not to shade us at all, but I just think he's definitely in that category of player, and we're not quite there yet to be, putting our hat in the ring for a player like that, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think we're just kind of in that level below where we're looking at top players, but not quite the Bellinghams of the world. I still think because of that childhood connection from Bellingham, like he probably will want to go to Liverpool. After England played Ukraine, Bellingham was there with Steven Gerrard and literally told him to his face that he was his like childhood hero, and you could tell that there was something there. Like Bellingham definitely has some sort of childhood connection to Liverpool, but if he were not to go to Liverpool, which is like his childhood dream, he would go to probably the best option for him developmental wise, and also like footballing wise, like who's going to be challenging for, let's say, the Premier League title and Champions League. And so if he doesn't go to Liverpool, I think he'll end up at Man City. I know Real Madrid are also interested in him, but I just have this weird feeling that Haaland plus working under Pep plus being in the Premier League plus their ability to fight for the Champions League as well will just be the edge, you know what I mean? And so I don't think we're going to be in for Bellingham. Beyond that, the price tag is astounding. So yeah, I don't really see it, but I understand why people feel like he would be a good fit. Of course, footballing wise, he'd be a great fit, but yeah, it doesn't seem like something that Arsenal would be doing right now. C. Wilder says Jude speaks so well for a 19-year-old. Yeah, he seems very like wise and mature beyond his years. He's an excellent player. John Donut says Bellingham to Arsenal would be RIP to everyone else. Yeah, that'd be an insane midfield. Yasinio is saying it. Bellingham, Partey, Odegaard would be unfair anyway. Exactly. We have to make sure that we have a little bit of competition. We don't want to make it so that, it's an uncompetitive situation for everybody else, right? Neil says Bellingham will more than likely cost our whole budget, so all the other positions won't be able to be filled. Yes, he's quality, but we need to fix other positions first. Yeah. Bellingham is an LFC fan, but LFC can't pay for him. Yeah, I mean, if they can't pay, somebody else definitely will. Tony says, relax is the right word. I'm just excited for the transfer window. This regime has gotten so much right. So let's go ahead and jump in. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We have to start with Bukayo Saka. No, I'm just joking. Bukayo Saka, over the last 18 months, has developed into potentially the best right winger in the world. And his consistency, his mentality, his footballing IQ, all of those things have just kind of come together. And then he's added this ruthlessness to his game. And he's just an outstanding young player. He's 21 years old, and he looks like he's been around forever. People are saying that he's downloaded the Ian Robin package where he's going to cut onto his left foot, but he's so good you can't stop it anyway. And I do see that. I'm not saying he's as good as Ian Robin, but what I am saying is that like he's just unplayable. I've only seen maybe one or two players being able to stop him. The only player that I felt like he genuinely could not get beyond was Nathan Ake. But beyond that, he's pretty much been unplayable this season. And like I said, he's added that ruthlessness to his game. And so the goals are definitely coming now, and the end product is there. Before, it was a little hit or miss, but now he has it. And so he's literally the best right winger in the world right now. And teams like Manchester City and Real Madrid have been interested in him. And it looks like he is going to stay at Arsenal, which was never in doubt. Bukayo Saka is a player that I've never worried about in terms of him re-signing. I thought as long as we progressed and showed the ambition necessary to keep somebody like him, we'd be in a good position. And so he's basically now on the cusp of signing a £15 million per year deal with Arsenal, which comes out to, £300,000 per week, all bonuses included. So originally, when this was reported, it was £200,000 per week, which is probably about where it's going to be. He's going to be our top paid player. He's going to be right up there with Gabriel Jesus and Thomas Partey, which makes sense because when you look at those players, Arsenal need those players to play at the highest level. And Saka, if you had to write down the most important players at Arsenal, I think he'd make everybody's top three. Most important players at Arsenal. He's the face of Arsenal. I know people don't like this terminology, but he is our franchise player, and he's just, an outstanding young man. And so I know Arsenal fans in the past have had a reluctancy to, been a reluctant to give out big contracts like this. And £200,000 per week going up to £300,000 per week with bonuses is a lot of money for a 21-year-old. But he's not a 21-year-old in the sense of how he plays. He plays like the best winger in the league, if not the world. And so you have to pay those players those wages. And I've always been wanting Arsenal to make these types of moves because I feel like in the past, as an Arsenal fan, we've watched some of our best and brightest talent leave us because we weren't willing to give them what they deserved, not off the pitch or on it. We weren't dedicated enough to making Arsenal a superpower, so they played without the types of players around them that would let Arsenal become that type of club, or they didn't get the wages. And you have to do both. You can't just give them the money, but then not build the squad, because we did that with Ozil. We tried to do that with Alexis, and those two players, you can say that we wasted their talent because we didn't bring the right players around them. So it's not just about the wages, but for Bukayo Saka, I've been waiting for Arsenal to do this, to give players what they deserve monetarily, to keep the bigger clubs or the clubs that are further along away from our players, and then match that with the type of ambition that is necessary to keep those players at the club. So that's what they're doing with Bukayo Saka. I think we're going to have another big summer window that's going to match Arsenal's ambition, and we're going to pay Bukayo Saka like the best winger in the world because that's what he is. I know Arsenal fans are worried about it, but I don't think it's something you should worry about because this is just what it's like being a big club. And we didn't decrease the wage bill to keep it that way. We're not Leicester, we're not Brighton, we're not Brentford, we're not those types of clubs. When you look at the wage bills of teams that are always in the Champions League and are competitive, they have players on these types of wages. So it's not something the only time it becomes a worry is if the wages are not matching what you're seeing on the pitch. And right now it is. And so I'm over the moon with Bukayo Saka. I think he's outstanding. And yeah, we're so lucky to have him and Martinelli because the types of players that they are, the amount that we'd have to pay for them would be it would just be so much, you know what I mean? And I'm not sure that Arsenal would be able to buy players like that, if that makes sense. Crispy says big W. Andrew says if we sell players that generate funds, we can sign Bellingham and still buy two other players. CU says, as an Arsenal fan for years, now midfield has always been so important. Okay, so you guys are talking about midfield. Arsenal says he'll probably go City. You guys are still talking about Bellingham. The comments didn't CU says Saka is the best thing to happen to Arsenal since Fabregas. Just give him what he wants, honestly. Neil says, I don't think Rice. Okay, you guys are saying. Seawalder says, unlike Abba, this kid won't relax until once the contract is signed. Yeah, I hear that. Let's see. Ionle says, just breaking news, Real Madrid looking at Jesus to replace Benzema. Is that why we are looking at Højlund? I'll star that and we can talk about that in a little bit. Mamang says, what is the actual salary? We never really know what the actual salary is. I think originally when it was reported, it was £200,000 per week. And then obviously when they report it, because they want to sensationalize it, they put the whole fee, the £15 million per year, which comes out to £300,000 per week or something like that. So, but that's what all bonuses included. So we don't actually know, but he's worth that. Sir Nicholas says Saka is worth every penny. I don't care what they pay him. I'm kind of in the same boat. We have to keep him because if this is what he's like at 21, I just can't, when he hits his prime, I just can't imagine what type of player he would be. Yo-Yo says Saka should be a top paid player. He's likely sacrificed the later years of his career by doing so much at a tender age. Siu says Le Petit Pigment. You guys, don't do this to me. Starboy, Godchild. I can't get over it. John P says 10 million a year with 5 million in bonuses is a bargain to me. When we're talking about the best player, the best winger in the world, the best right winger in the world, the best right winger in the league, you have to be willing to pay those wages despite his age. And I kind of agree with Yo-Yo. We don't know what his career will be like when he gets older. We know some players, and I'm obviously, I hope that this is not the case, but if he's somebody that, spends his early 20s, mid 20s with Arsenal, and then because he's played so much football, kind of tails off a little bit, we need to take advantage of his years now because he's already playing like a prime player. Do you know what I mean? Sir Nicholas says exactly, Jess. If he keeps on this trajectory, his salary will be a bargain in 3 years. Yo-Yo says Saka needs to be making at least Foden, Sancho level money to keep hands off him. I agree. Karen says Wenger would have lost Saka because he was not willing to pay top players the wages. I wouldn't say Wenger. I would say Arsenal because we know it wasn't just Arsene. But I get what you're saying, and I just always go back to you can't lose your especially players from your academy. You just can't do it. Like Ashley Cole, I know that we call him casually and all that kind of stuff, but in reality, it's just kind of like, could you have not given him the extra 5,000? Like, could you have not done that? Just been more competitive because there's other teams that will pay that, and you just don't want to. It's something different with the academy kids. Like, you just don't want to lose somebody like that to a rival because you weren't willing to give them what they were worth. I understand players that are not worth that, but for me, like at the time where we lost Ashley Cole, he was the best fullback in the world. You know what I mean? And so Saka's in that same kind of position. Obviously, he's a right winger, so it's different, but we have to be willing to be competitive and not be afraid. And you just have to do it with the right players. It's not about doing it with every single player. It's about doing it with the right players. I think in the past we've done it with the wrong players. C. Wilder says, I'm pretty sure Arteta is a fan of highly incentivized contracts, which makes me think it's bulked out with bonuses. Not that Arteta does the negotiations, but may have influence. I do think that there's a lot of performance based bonuses in Saka's contract, but I do think the base is going to make him our highest paid player. So that could give you like a kind of, I think Jesus is on £190,000 per week, so let's see. Richie Rabbit says they didn't want to pay Cole's agent fees. To me, that's just dumb. But at the same time, like, I'm not there. I don't know. I wasn't in negotiations, but I think hindsight, you can look at it and say it was probably a mistake. Just pay the guy, because it's not like Ashley Cole wasn't an outstanding player. I can understand if he was mid, Ray DeGooner says, Sir Bukayo Saka of Hale End, all hail the king of the Premier League. So the one that I saw for Jesus was 190,000 pounds per week. But that's the thing. It's also when you look at it on different websites, some say 190,000 pounds per week, and some say it's like closer to 250. So again, like it's hard to get like the actual like clear vision of what it is because nobody really knows what these guys are making. But we just know that he's going to probably be our highest paid, and that's just what it is. So there's 127 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to move on to the next subject of today's stream, which is Jesper Lindstrom. Arsenal have made contact with Frankfurt to, sign him. They're very interested in him, and they have been for a while. Like the original kind of, I'll pull it up because I tweeted about it a long time ago. So on March 30th, 2021, I had tweeted, "We are linked with Jesper Lindstrom, a young player at Brøndby in Denmark, attacking midfielder that scores goals. He's tall and lanky, but quick and skillful at the same time. I like him. Take a look." And I posted his YouTube clips there. That was in 2021. And then we were linked with him again in 2022 when he moved to Frankfurt. And now we're linked with him again. He is going to leave Frankfurt this summer, and the fee being banded around is around 30 million pounds. And a lot of people are not as interested in this player as I am. Jesper Lindstrom, Danish international, technically very sound, pretty quick, 6-footer. He has 7 goals and 2 assists for Eintracht Frankfurt this season. He scored 1 in the Champions League as well. And he's just a nice player. Like he just, to me, technically fits what Arsenal are all about. And he has that level of versatility that I think is really useful for a team like Arsenal. But when I tweeted that he was my number 1 target for the right wing position or like just another attacker, a lot of people were not interested in him. And I understand why, because I think the idea is, hold on, you guys. Am I frozen? Hold on, you guys. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened. Okay. I'm back. Whatever. I don't know what happened there. But I feel like a lot of people were not interested in this player because he's not a stick-on winger. Like he's not like Saka, And I think the idea for a lot of Arsenal fans is that the winger has to be just like Saka, left-footed, quick, kind of just a traditional winger. And Jesper Lindstrom is not that. He's more of an attacking midfielder that plays out on the wing or can play right side, central mid. And, my feeling on the whole right wing scenario is not necessarily that. I don't think that maybe we need a more 1v1 quick winger, because we looked at something like that for Mudryk. That's what Mudryk was supposed to be. Like Trossard and Mudryk are not the same, like in any way, shape, or form. Like we couldn't get Mudryk, so we went for something that was more versatile. He was a little bit more of somebody that just fits the group versus, another winger that has that directness and all that kind of stuff. And so when I look at right wingers, I don't see in the market that many options for what people are looking for. I don't see a right-sided Mudryk out there that really, for me, fits what is good enough for Arsenal, basically. So for me, the market kind of dictates what we should be going for, not necessarily like best case scenario would be we could go in and get Rafinha. Best case scenario would be, that there was a Pedro Neto was, had been playing all season and was fit and looked like he was ready to step up to Arsenal. But those things haven't really happened. And so I don't see us being able to get Rafinha. I don't necessarily see Neto being an option because he's been injured for so long. And so I don't know if we should just get a winger of the profile that people are really looking for, or should we get somebody that fits the group and see what happens with the market when it gets better, if that makes sense. An example of that would be like our transfer strategy feels very versatile because when we went in for Vlahovic, he's so different than Jesus. And so, we went in for Vlahovic, and then when the summer came around, the options for center forward, like the big center forward, were like Tammy Abraham and Calvert-Lewin. And instead of going for those mid options that are not good enough for Arsenal, we went for Jesus. And so I feel like that's Arsenal's transfer strategy. It's, we know we need this player. We'll go for our number one option. But if our number one option is not available or we fail to get him, instead of just going for the next guy down that pecking order that's probably not that good, we go for a technical player with some versatility that fills the squad needs in the meantime. And so that's what Lindstrom is to me. He's not necessarily a stick-on right winger. He's not a Rafinha. He's not that type of player. But I think the options below Rafinha that are attainable are not good enough. And so that's why Lindstrom would be my number one option. Because even if, let's say Rafinha were to become available the summer after, Lindstrom can play right center mid. He can play left center. Like, he can play any of those attacking mid positions as well. And so, yeah, it's interesting because I know people don't like him, but I do. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why this thing keeps going out. It's like giving me a heart attack. Okay. Saxon says Lindstrom is shit. Give me Højlund. Well, he's not shit, is he? CU says he's Thomas Muller-like. Lionide says the problem with Lindstrom is that he doesn't score enough. I mean, he has 7 goals and 2 assists in a team that's crap. Yo-Yo says, oh, this guy's a winger. Don't know why I thought he was a CM. I mean, he's like Emile Smith-Rowe. He's like Emile. Like, he's similar to Emile in that way where everybody feels like he can play left mid, he can play false 9, he can play left wing. And so he's definitely not a stick-on winger. But the fact that we're continuously linked with this guy and our interest is genuine makes me think that like Arsenal are okay with bringing in a more versatile player, because maybe the wingers that are out there are not good enough. Because there's no point in bringing in just a mid winger. There's just no point in it. You know what I mean? Terrence Tibbs says, shame Spurs got him. If you guys are talking about Kulusevski, he would have been perfect. Richie Rabbit says, don't want an injury-prone Neto when we already have injury-prone ESR. Diallo says, I'm not saying Jesper is not good. All I'm saying is his profile will be redundant. Højlund is made for this from the same lab as Haaland. I need that at AFC. We'll talk about Højlund in just a second, as long as my camera does not go down. Ashraf says, what about Neto from Wolves? Thank you so much for your super chat. Like I already said about Neto, like, I think that was a thing for the summer that we were looking at, but at the same time, like, they wanted a huge fee for him and we weren't going to pay that. And he got injured, and he's injured a lot. And so he just came out of the under 21s, for Wolves, at basically like almost like the same time as Emile Smith-Rowe. And he really hasn't shown like a full season of like consistent playing for a while. And so, yeah, he could be an option, but I don't know. I feel like those injuries make the timing of it not work, you know? Lionide says, every player in from no one should it like from now should rise the level of the starting 11. That means very few but prolific players. I see Iswe says Lindstrom is underrated. Sebastian says Jesper would fit amazing in the team. He's really a good alternative to Style and Saka. And I guess my thing would be, we're very worried about Saka all the time in terms of his availability and or his fitness and is he gonna fall apart and all this kind of stuff. I think my feeling on that is when you give somebody like Saka the type of contract that you're about to give him and the amount of minutes that he plays next season, Saka's going to play pretty much every game of the Premier League, as well as in the Champions League too. And so I think the idea that you would bring in like a Diaby type or a Neto, players that probably aren't really going to be getting that much playing time in that position unless Saka is injured, which is it doesn't happen very often. I'm not sure that you want to pay 60 million for a player like that, unless they have to be special. And I'm not sure that Diaby or Neto are special players. I think they're nice players that if we didn't have Saka, we'd probably want them more. But you bring in somebody like Lindstrom, he can operate in different positions. So he's more useful. Trossard is very similar in that same vein where we brought him in as a left wing, but he plays central for us. And so even when Martinelli is starting, there is a very good use for Trossard. I just am not really convinced that a Neto or a Diaby type of guy, one, is going to want to be behind Saka, which basically means you're never really going to play. You're never going to be better than him. It's not happening. And they don't have any other positions that they can play. That's their position. So it's an interesting one, really. But yeah, I think I like Jesper Lindstrom. We've been linked with him long enough for me to feel like he is a real option. And, I like that he's going to be different than Saka. I also think versatility in the squad is important in terms of, okay, so if this is not working, can we do something else? And he's definitely not like a stick-on winger, but the guy he's really good. I don't know. When I watch him, I'm like, that's what I like. Richie Rabbit says, does Lindstrom have a left foot to cut in from right wing? No, he doesn't. But I'm also not really convinced that the other player has to be left-footed. I think if you're going to bring in a versatile type of player, they can kind of be whatever, if you're looking for somebody that's going to like a Rafinha, I think that's why we went in for Rafinha is because Arteta really liked him and he deemed him as a special player. That's the type of player you go out there, you spend 70 million on or whatever. He's very similar to Saka, blah, 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 blah. These other guys that are left-footed that can cut in and all this kind of stuff, they're not on the same level as Rafinha. You know what I mean? So I think if you bring in a versatile player, they don't have to be left-footed. Tony says, Lindstrom looks so Arteta, very technical and smart inside and out. Zich says, and an ESR-like player on the right may be interesting. Because it's funny because people were fighting me on Twitter about, well, he's not really a winger, right? And I'm like, oh, he's really good in the right half space, but he's not a winger. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. We get really caught up in is he a left wing? Is he right? If you operate in the left half or in the right half space, you can play right wing. It just depends on what type of characteristics you want in those areas. We know that Odegaard, Saka, the combination of those two in the right half space is really, really good. They switch places. Sometimes Saka is more inside and Odegaard is more wide. None of that really matters. I don't think the position really matters. It's the skill set, and do you want to have those skill sets available to you on that part of the pitch? And I think Lindstrom in the right half space has some characteristics that would be really useful that could also be useful at right mid. Like there's so many different things you can do. Diallo says Nelson, the Brazilian, does not have a future at AFC, but we can beef him up for a fat sale in the summer. Yeah, I'm kind of not really like Nelson is definitely there, but I do think that he'll be way down the list in terms of the depth chart at the winger positions. Like, I don't think he has a long-term future, but in the short term, he'll be fine. C. Wilder says, can Matoma play right? I'm slightly obsessed. I think he's a left winger. The thing about the winger market, which is interesting, is that there's a lot more variety and a lot more talent on the left than there is the right. That's why Saka is so valuable. It's because there aren't a lot of really good right wingers. There just isn't. Like, if you really think about it, like deep down, like really think, how many good right wingers are there in the world? There's not many. You know, Man City, you probably look at them, they probably need a right winger because Mahrez is getting a little bit older. Even Real Madrid, they're probably looking for a right winger because, you know, they can even up those sides because Vinny plays on the left. There's not a lot of right wing talent. There's a lot of more left wing talent. And so I think Matoma is left, and that's just kind of where he operates and operates best. And we don't really need that because we already have Trossard. So when we're, you know, looking like, I think we may be interested in Matoma, but it's kind of like light interest, if that makes sense, because we already have players, like two really good players that play there. Yes, signing Kulusevski would be crazy. Edu would have to pull off something special to pry him from Levy. Yeah, I don't think we're getting Kulusevski, even though I think he'd be perfect. Like, I actually think he would have been a perfect option because he's different to Saka, but has the left foot, and I think he's like a winger version of De Bruyne. You know, but obviously not as good because De Bruyne is like an insane player. But you guys know what I mean. Those same kind of characteristics. Cal says ESR is a midfielder and Arteta pushing him to the left. He can play false nine as well. ESR is really interesting because I do think that he makes the conversations around what we need in midfield and on the wing complicated because one, we don't really know what position he'll be playing, and two, some people are more convinced about his long-term future at Arsenal than others. It's not a conversation that I wish to get into today because like we don't have time, but he makes it interesting. We've been linked to that Gabri Viega. He looks so good at Celta Vigo. I mean, that I like all the players that I like are like the same. You know, they're they're all like the same. 6 foot, direct ball carriers with technical ability. They're all the same. So I was looking at him and I was like, he looks perfect. But you have Emil Smith Rowe, so you kind of have to look and say, like, why would we link to these players if Emil can do those things, right? But back to Lindstrom, interesting profile. Been linked to him since 2021. Desperate for a move. Could be a really good, versatile, attacking midfield winger type of profile for Arsenal. And I'd love to see him at the Arsenal, even though other people are not that interested. There's 140 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. So moving on to the other Dane that we've been interested in. See how I made it? It's like Saka, then Lindstrom, now another. Yeah, you see how I did that? You see how I did that? Okay, well, whatever. Let's talk about Rasmus Hojlund, Arsenal's answer to Erling Haaland, apparently. 6'3", center forward that plays for Atalanta. He is the new thing. You know what I mean when I say the new thing, the new obsession. He's the new Vlahovic, basically. And he's 20. And he has 7 goals and 1 assist for Atalanta. And then obviously he scored 5 goals on this international break so far for Denmark. So he's the next thing. It's so weird how it's like Haaland, like how does that happen? But he is like a more technical Erling Haaland, it seems like, really. You look at his his like stats and stuff like that, like on FB Ref, I think it's really interesting because you can see that he has more of like a quality to build up that Haaland doesn't really have. We know that he's just not, Haaland ain't doing it, right? But Hojlund, progressive passes are pretty good for a center forward, progressive carries, successful take-ons, touches in the attacking penalty area is great, obviously, and progressive passes received. Like, he looks like somebody that's more involved in build up than like Haaland is. And the players that he's similar to, Balogun is on there, Jonathan David, Vlahovic, Harry Kane, Immobile or whatever the fuck his name is, Immobile. Immobile. Sorry. What? Whatever. Immobile. What is Immobile? What the hell? Anyways, so he seems more technical. He could be more involved in build up, and he won't be like, donkey touches when you try to have him help you build up. So he's the new thing, the new taste of the town, the new fancy, he's the new thing. So I expect Arsenal fans to be like very obsessed with this guy, right? There are rumors that Arsenal are willing to or want to put in like a 44 million pound offer for this guy. And what's interesting about this is this goes back to my point about Arsenal having a more fluid and versatile transfer strategy than people give us credit for. I think that, going from Mudryk to Trossard, going from Vlahovic to Jesus, those types of things, going from Lissandro Martinez to Zinchenko shows that Arsenal have different profiles that they're interested in getting to the Arsenal team. Some have a higher priority than others, but we're versatile enough where if the market doesn't have that player available, we can pivot, get something that we know we need, and then return back to that profile at another date. And going for Vlahovic first, for me, makes me feel like Arsenal really still want that bigger striker. Is it a priority? Do we need that profile? Probably yes. I think especially for like cup football and stuff like that, you need to have something else versus in the league. It's more about that repetitive, being able to churn out those 3 points every week. Cup football is a little bit more unpredictable, so you need different weapons and stuff like that. And so for playing in Champions League, for things like that, we probably do need this profile, a bigger, taller striker. This, like, is it a priority this summer? I don't know. I think that's where I'm a little bit less convinced that it's something that we need to do this summer. But I mean, is this the type of player that you move things around to bring in because you're not going to see? It's weird that another striker like this is just available, you know what I mean, a couple of years after Haaland. It's, you don't really see these guys very often. So is this the type of player that you kind of change your plans for to bring him in because you just don't know what's going to happen? I don't know. You guys were talking about, Real Madrid being interested in Jesus to replace Benzema. I just don't see it. To be honest, we gave him the number 9 shirt. He's looks pretty settled at Arsenal. Real Madrid are interested in so many people's players. That doesn't necessarily mean that we need to sell him. And I feel like Arsenal fans want this big, tall striker so much that they're willing to sacrifice Jesus for him. But I don't see that being the case. So let's look at our striker depth. I think that will give us a really decent talking point here, and see what players, because it's not going to be Jesus, you guys. I'm gonna keep it real. It's not going to be Jesus. So the player, if you want to move a player on to get this Hojlund guy, it's not going to be Jesus. So let's just move that on. But Arsenal striker depth looks like this. You have Jesus, you have Nketiah, Trossard, and Balogun. I don't really count Martinelli and ESR. We know that they can play there, but they're not really the number 1, 2, 3 option there. The only reason why we got to Martinelli through the middle is because we didn't have the first 3. And so you have Balogun there, and you have Eddie there as well. And then maybe there's a potential to bring in another forward or center forward in the summer to beef that up a little bit more. It's not going to be Jesus, so let's just take that away. It's offended me to my core that people want to get rid of Gabriel Jesus, okay? But let's talk about it. If we wanted to bring in a Rasmus Hojlund, the type of center forward that doesn't come around very often, a profile that we were trying to bring in before we got Jesus, how could we make that happen? Now, this ties in really well with the news around Folarin Balogun, where, Arsenal want to bring him into preseason, but they're also tempted to sell him while the iron is hot. And I think there's a chance that we may sell Balogun because his quotes that came out about Arsenal and him need to have talks, and there's a lot to talk about. I don't think Balogun wants to come back and be our third choice. I think right now, Jesus is the number 1, obviously, and then you have Nketiah and Trossard. I have to be honest, I think Trossard is a better option through the middle for us than Eddie, just because we can keep our same fluidity. Eddie, for me, doesn't really give us that, but you have Trossard and Eddie there, So Balogun, what is he going to do? Come in and be third? I cannot see that. He's playing too well, and you just don't come back to sit. So what do you do? Balogun, you could sell him this summer and get 40 million for him. I would be open to that with a buyback clause. I think exactly what Chelsea did with Tammy Abraham is something that we should probably do with Balogun. I just don't see him coming back and wanting to be third choice. I can't see it even being loaned out again, the uncertain future. I think, it's something that Arsenal should look at. In terms of Eddie, I know people want Eddie out because he's not really that guy for people. But who's going to buy Eddie on the wages that he's on? We know that Eddie is on somewhere around £100,000 per week. Maybe even if it's a little bit less than that, let's say it's £80,000 per week. The type of clubs that would be interested in Eddie, I'm not quite sure are going to want to spend that on him. So we're in a weird situation where I think the only 2 players that we feel 100% confident in right now are Jesus and Trossard. We know we need another attacker. Is that attacker going to be a right winger? Is that player going to be able to play through the center? Do we need that tall physical striker because we'll be in Champions League? I think there's going to be a shuffling in the summer in terms of what goes on here, because right now you have a lot of samey players. You have Jesus and Trossard that are pretty similar, and then you have Nketiah that's physicality-wise is pretty similar to them, but different, but not in a good way, I don't think. And then you have Balogun, who is probably chomping at the bit to do his thing. So what do we do? What do we do? I think you sell Balogun because Eddie is on that contract. But if I had to choose who I'd want to maybe go, it probably would be Eddie. So who knows? Elliot Roberts says Balogun buyback sounds good, if not a loan for another year to a Premier League club. Richie Rabbit says it might also depend whether we win the league, Jess. In terms of what would change if we won the league? Saksham says Chelsea will buy Højlund for 100 million. I think Chelsea are really looking at Osimhen. I think that's the player that we'll go for. And that's another aspect of this that I think is important, is that Arsenal are looking for a striker to potentially backfill what we already have. there are several Premier League clubs that are going to be looking for their starting striker. Um, Chelsea and Man United, need their starting striker. So could you bring in a Højlund to be a backup? Is that really, his journey at this point? I don't know. So I think signing this type of striker is not a priority for this summer. It's a priority for the next summer, maybe, or beyond that. I still would probably be looking to sell Balogun just because, strike while the iron is hot, and then bring in a right winger because that's what feels right for where we are right now. But, you know, Saksham says Osimhen ain't going from potential UCL final to Conference League playoffs. Stuart says, hold on real quick. Hold on. Why does it keep doing that? Sorry, you guys, give me 1 second. I don't know why it keeps pausing for some reason. So annoying. My life and these streams. We're gonna just keep powering on. All right, so sell both and buyback clauses to get 70 million. Bring Højlund. Gosh, we really want that Højlund guy. You guys would sacrifice anybody for Højlund, huh? Rep says, is Balogun better than Eddie? I don't know. I think when we talk about ceilings and stuff like that, that can kind of be like just hypotheticals. But Balogun, to me, technical wise, is a better fit than Eddie. So, but if Eddie were in League One, do you not think that Eddie would be scoring that amount of goals? I feel like he would in a team that's creating those chances. So is Balogun better than Eddie? I don't know, but is Balogun footballing wise a better fit than Eddie? I think so. But with Trossard and Jesus, do we actually need Balogun? Because then you have three strikers that are kind of very similar. And so I think, I'm not sure. Richie Rabbit says, as much as I like Balogun, he's untried at the Premier League level, while Eddie has form. Flying Nimbus says, I think Eddie is affordable. Flava Max says, keep all and push to compete in everything. Mikey B says, we can sign him and loan him out. Hang says, or Ultima says, hang. Don't know what that means. Terrence Tibbs says, I think Jess is massively underrating Balogun because he is American. That's exactly what I'm doing. Diallo says, Odegaard getting kicked from pillar to post by these Georgians, and I don't like it. I haven't really been paying attention to a lot of this stuff just because international break, because one, it's not interesting to me, and two, I just have too much anxiety watching our players play, get kicked in games that don't matter to me. So yeah, I'm not watching. Yo-Yo says, I've yet to see Arteta let go of someone at Arsenal he loves. Hecky B wanted to leave and eventually got his wish. Eddie was talked into renewing his contract by Arteta. He's not going anywhere. I really agree. I agree with this. I think we maybe underestimate how much Arteta loves Eddie. And so I think Balogun is really the more likely to leave. And I think you can't have all four. You're going to have to move somebody on. And I don't think it's smart to even keep Balogun anyway, because let's say Balogun, next season doesn't do as well. And then we're looking back at that 40 million, like, damn, we could have got that. Like, remember that Ryan Brewster that went to Sheffield for like 30 something million, almost 40 million from Liverpool, off of the back of like a loan somewhere, I think. That's the type of money that Arsenal should be getting in for their players. I mean, the profile of Arsenal players is going to go up massively by how successful we've been this season. So, yeah, I don't see Eddie leaving. I think it's more of a Balogun thing. They'll bring him in, but they might sell him. And if somebody were to offer 40 million, I think you take it, because with a buyback clause, because he's not going to come and be third choice after starting. He's just not going to do it. It's not happening. Saksham says, I have trust issues from Laka experience. I mean, Lacazette is scoring hella goals in that league. So, we know I think Balogun is doing well there, but I'm not convinced that he just comes in and he's performing at Arsenal the way that he's performing at Reims. So, and Didi says, I think we sell Balogun. I just don't see space for him in the team. I agree with that. And I think it's not the end of the world. And the way that Trossard has come in has made me feel a lot more comfortable with Eddie being an option because we know that there's somebody that can play like Jesus up there. So as long as we bring in another forward, whether that's a right winger or whatever, I think we'll be fine. There's 170 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Diallo says, I rate Flo highly, but Eddie is ahead of him. Arteta will trust Eddie more than Flo. At the moment, it's simple sell while the stocks are high. I like that. Tony says, how much of an upgrade would Balogun be for the U.S. men's national team? I think considering the player that's probably the best player that we have at center forward right now couldn't make it in Augsburg team or Augsburg or whatever, a relegation Bundesliga side, I would say Balogun, he would eat for that U.S. men's national team squad. I think he's the best option, and that's why they're throwing everything at him, so he would be a massive upgrade. I think Ricardo Pepi is really good, but I think they should be the two options because everything beyond that, Daryl DK, Ferreira, these guys are just not good enough. Denver says we need to sell our players for more money. We act like Walmart when it comes to sales. Richie Rabbit says, I don't rate Eddie so much, and if he wasn't Haaland, I'd find it easier to advocate upgrading on him. So yeah, I think from everybody is kind of split on this, which makes sense because we don't all think the same. That Balogun should either stay, he should go, whatever. I think he goes. And I think the center forward options that we have now are the center forward options that we'll have next season. But we'll bring in another attacker and we'll continue to play the fluid style that we play right now because we could get better at that. And then the season after, maybe we look at the big center forward because I think that's something that Arsenal want. It's just not a priority for now. And also, I want to say that this about Eddie. He's not my favorite, but I also think that his injury coincided with his poor form, and that's the last time that we kind of saw him. And so I'm choosing to remember Eddie like before the injury, not how we saw him with it. Because I don't know if I told you guys this, but somebody in a group chat that I know was telling me weeks before Eddie actually stopped playing because of his injury that he had that injury and that it was a bad one. But at the time, we didn't have anybody else. And so I think Eddie played through that injury. And when he was playing through that injury, that's when the poor form was there. So I don't think Eddie just evened out. I think Eddie's been injured. Oh my God. This is a nightmare. These, I don't know why this is happening. And why is doing this to me? Every day is a nightmare with the internet and these cameras. I'm trying to come back, y'all. All right. Oh, sorry, guys. It went out. And I don't know why. Let's go through the last one so I can get out of here because I can't get over the internet, man. It's just or why everything is just like, yeah. You guys know how it flustered. I get so flustered when this stuff happens. So, last but not least, let's talk about Declan Rice. Arsenal fans are in full Bellingham to Liverpool mode when it comes to Declan Rice. And the only thing I really want to say about this is just hold your horses, calm down. Don't go over the top with this one because if Madrid has taught you anything, it's that the player is not really ours until he's on the Arsenal website. And I know that's a very old school thing to say, but that transfer saga in itself for me was enough to make me feel like, okay, let's just relax a minute, because even though I think we're the best option for Declan Rice, we're it's the best fit. We're the best option because of where we are on the table, the project, the spot that he'd be taking, all those types of things, the coach that we have. I can't get this feeling out of the back of my head that Todd Bowley is going to put in a bid for him to make sure that, one, their academy product doesn't go to a rival, and two, so that they can hoard all the talent. And so they're not going to get Bellingham. They're not going to be in the Bellingham saga. Like, Chelsea have no chance of getting Bellingham no matter how much they try to pay him. So the next best thing is like Caicedo, Lavia, and Declan Rice. And those are all three of those players we're linked to as well. So our pursuit of Declan Rice, in my opinion, will definitely coincide with Bowley and them trying to get involved with it, especially because he came from their academy. And it's a bad look for somebody of his quality that came from their academy to go to a rival that is fighting for titles. So I do think that they'll try to come back in for him. And you just know how it is. Players, their childhood club, the money that they're going to be offering, and stuff like that. I would not go overboard with this. We're reading lips. We're out here reading lips, trying to figure out what Declan Rice and Zinchenko were saying to each other. Hold your horses. DiMarzio has said that, Declan Rice's most likely destination is Arsenal or Liverpool. Liverpool probably will be looking at Declan Rice as well, but every report out there has kind of said that he wants to stay in London. So I still think we're a better option than Liverpool, but I cannot get that feeling out of my head that Bowley will try. They will try, even though they're probably not going to have any sort of Europe, for next season. But what they'll tell him is, we won't have any Europe, but that'll pretty much guarantee us top four, because we'll be just focusing on the league, so I can see those conversations happening. I want Declan Rice not because he's my favorite player, but because that seems like Arteta's number one choice. And I think over the last couple of seasons, he hasn't always gotten his number one choice, and he's done really well with what he's been given. But the midfield has got to be our top options, I think. We're due a midfield reconstruction, I think. This summer, two midfielders, in my opinion, need to come in, top targets as well. And so we need to take advantage of the fact that we could potentially either be Premier League champions or a team that was fighting for the title. We're in Champions League. We have got to capitalize on that. And so Edu has to deliver Declan Rice, I think. If that's our number one target, I think he needs to be delivered, So I hope we bring in Declan Rice. But what I will say is, Arsenal fans, please, for the love of God, calm down. Let's not go too far. I just have this weird feeling about it all. DeRozier says, we aren't signing Rice because we never signed our main target. It was Tielemans in the summer, Mudryk in Jan. Well, I mean, was Tielemans is not a player that we couldn't have gotten, though. I don't know if Tielemans was our number one target. Mudryk, he was our number one, and we didn't get him. So we do have this weird relationship with the number one target and not really being able to get that over the line. But if we're Premier League champions and we're in, we have the Champions League carrot and we can't get our number one targets, it's a conversation that needs to be had. Like, our number one target's not Bellingham, it's Declan Rice. It's a very attainable, achievable target. But at the same time, like, money talks, and you have to be able to convince people that this is the right place to be. Lonely Star says Mudryk wanted out of a war-torn country, so he was twerking for freedom. This isn't the same, I can't lie. We all know what happened with Mudryk. It's Denver says, Jess, why don't we push for Zubamendi a bit more just in case? I don't know. He seems like an option, but at the same time, when I think he's a really good player, I just wonder if we need another player like that. I mean, for the DM role, like, I think we need an 8 and a 6. I think I'm still unclear on whether Declan Rice is the 8 or the 6, but let's just say for argument's sake that Declan Rice is the 8 and he would be taking Xhaka's position. The number 6 I think needs to have some sort of athleticism. I think that's the difference in our midfield from like a Jorginho to a Thomas Partey, is that when you don't have Thomas Partey in there, all of your athleticism is gone. No shade to Zubamendi. I think he's a good technical player, a Xavi Alonso type of DM, but I don't want to lose all of our, athleticism in midfield. You need a little bit of that. So yeah, I think Rice plus a Caicedo for me would be a better option, but that's just me. Richie Rabbit says Rice can do both depending on need. I think he can do both. I wouldn't want to just get him, like, you know what I mean? I still want to get 2 midfielders, but he can do both. But he also, there's a lot of quotes going around from him. If you can Google it, of him talking about how he wants to play a box-to-box role, how he feels like he can be more influential in the final third. And he plays for 2 of the most suppressive managers in the world, in David Moyes and Gareth Southgate. And so they pretty much, reduced him to a ball winner, and he still shines in the teams that he's in. And so if he feels like there's more in his locker, I mean, he's 24. So if Arteta can turn Xhaka into an attacking 8, I'm sure he can turn Declan Rice into one like that. And so I have a feeling that that's what, Arteta doesn't want to compromise his defensive solidity in midfield, so having a Declan Rice and getting him to learn how to make those third man runs and stuff like that would be probably easier than bringing in another number 8 that can't defend, if that makes sense. So Declan Rice to me as the 8 in the system that we play now makes a lot of sense. But we still need to bring in another number 6. Jorginho is not enough, and he only has a year left. Dev M says Rice can play 6 and 8. Versatility is key in Arteta's squad. Macau says Rice might not come because the incapacity of Edu. Edu is only good with Brazilian Portuguese players where he works through super agents like Kia and Mendes. That ain't right. Lonely Star says Declan Rice just got a Nigerian song done for him. Bring him to the club expeditiously. Ali A says if you get Rice, I don't see you get Caicedo as well. It will be one or the other. Arsenal need to bring in 2 midfielders. So, Jorginho is a Band-Aid for this season, but he's just not somebody that I think can carry the weight of Thomas Partey through a significant injury or anything like that. So I still think it's 2 CMs for me. If they bring in Declan Rice, maybe the idea is that he can play both. That's fine, but I still expect us to then do something like, I think we're like, is it not 4 players this summer, or is it 3? A right back, an attacker, and 1 CM feels a little light for, going into Champions League. I think we need 2, but it just depends, A cow says prefer Rice over Caicedo because of his physical preference. I prefer Rice and Caicedo, but if we had just Rice, I still think that, that he has the versatility that would make it like okay, but we need more than one, you guys. Let's see. Sakshem says we get in one CM, in my opinion. C. Wilder says Jorginho immortalized himself versus Villa. The Jorginho situation is, it's not that I think he's poor or bad or anything like that. I just think, the one thing that you can say is that if you have Declan Rice as your number 8, then you have a little bit more stability next to Jorginho. So if for some reason Partey was not there, then Jorginho and Declan Rice is a much better balance than Jorginho and Xhaka. I just feel like that combination in itself is like basically throwing yourself overboard when you can't swim. Like, you're not going to make it, It's so obviously not going to work, So, yeah, I think I would like 2 midfielders, but if we get one, then Rice makes sense because he can do both roles. But bringing in a right back, one midfielder, and one forward for me is not enough. But it also depends on what happens with ESR and stuff like that. Those things make a difference. Crispy says J20 and El Neni gone next summer. Yeah, I wonder if J20. Yeah, because Jorginho has basically taken El Neni's spot, and then we had Sambi, who could play 6 and 8, but it didn't really work out for him. So, technically, Declan Rice could take that position, and Sambi was the backup number 6, and then El Neni had to step in because Sambi wasn't good enough. So if you really think about it, which I never really thought about it before, if you replace Sambi with Rice, then Rice becomes the backup DM. Jorginho is El Neni. It's funny. Jorginho is El Neni. And then, basically Rice takes Sambi's position, but he actually can play number 6. So that kind of does make sense. C. Wilder says, I'm still dreaming of De Jong. I'm holding on to that because dreaming of Jesus worked. I don't know if your prayers are going to be answered on that one, to be honest. Dev M says, I think Sambi will be sold to Palace. Diallo says, Sambi and Nuno were both gambles, didn't pay off, so be it. Exactly. Sambi's not going to be back at Arsenal. So that's why I'm saying if you replace Sambi with Rice, then that makes sense because Sambi was kind of an 8 and a 6, So if you put Rice in that position, then he can do that. But I just expect us to go big this summer, and big for me is 2 midfielders, but ESR makes that a little bit more complicated because I don't really know what the expectation of him is in terms of like, is he going to be an 8 or not? But yeah, we'll see. Some people are saying that Odegaard is having a bad game. I don't give a shit. I really don't. I have to be really honest. I don't care. Like, have a poor game because when you come back and play for us, I know you'll be fine. Ollie A says it will be Xhaka, Partey, Rice, Jorginho, Odegaard, Vieira. Rice, Jorginho. To me, that's not good enough. We need one more. But Jorginho complicates that a little bit because I don't think you can move him on after him being there for 6 months. But I think we need another midfielder. But whatever. Mazzino says ESR is an 8, but his body breakdown, he needs a big preseason. Diallo says, but we can still make our money back at least. That's why it's important to buy young, versatile players. Tony says you can't think about new center mids as replacements. R6, right 6, R6 and left 8 jobs might not be the same jobs when we refresh the midfield. And left 8 may do R6 jobs and vice versa. Magdina says, I don't care what Odie does for Norway. My captain is world class for Arsenal, and that's all that matters. I really don't care. Like, I could care less. Like, always playing poorly, whatever. Like, just come back to us and play well, Gunnar V says, we never get any of our protracted targets, so my mind has already gone past Rice. Fair enough. Tony says, and it may be the case that, if we can't get Rice, then, you bring in a Caicedo plus another player to play 8. I don't know. But I think Rice is our number one target. So we'll see what happens. Richie Rabbit says if we sell a striker, Sambi and Tavares, we should be able to get 2 center mids, 1 right wing, and 1 fullback. What'll be interesting to see is how Arsenal feel about Tomiyasu's fitness and reliability. I don't want to kick. Obviously, I don't want to kick him while he's down. But if the idea was to sell Tierney and then have Tomiyasu be the backup left back, for me, that's a little bit, because basically Tomiyasu is a backup left back, a backup right back, and probably a utility center back as well. And so if he's not reliable, then I would feel uncomfortable selling Tierney and having Tomiyasu be that number one option, knowing that Zinchenko's history with injuries is not great either. The last thing you want is Zinchenko and Tomiyasu injured, and then what are you doing? So maybe a backup left back could come in as well, and Tomiyasu just becomes a versatile center back type of option. I don't know. I wouldn't mind that Grimaldo guy from Benfica, because he would be a free left back that can play inverted if Zinchenko gets injured. So I wonder if Arsenal will look at bringing in a right back and a left back, because if Tierney wants to go, you still can't rely on Tomiyasu to be a backup, because even as a backup, he struggles for fitness, so it'll be interesting. Richie Rabbit says, oh yeah, you guys already said that. Magzino says that Gabri Viega, whatever his name is, we're linked to, is going City. How do you know? How do you know that? Is he? D says Fabio Vieira's future is looking bleak, to be honest. I don't think so. Arteta really wants him. Arteta really likes him and has spoken very highly of him. So even if the fan base doesn't like him, I don't think he's going anywhere. So I think you guys should just get over it. Yo-Yo says selling the likes of Tierney, Tomiyasu, ESR this summer in one window would show club don't truly want to compete on multiple fronts. Fair enough. Marcus said it, that he's going to City. Let me go check. That would be devastating, because he looks really good and we could use him. Manchester City eyeing Celta Vigo to add depth to midfield. He's kind of linked with everybody though, you guys, because he's also linked with us. So the last thing Manchester City need, Newcastle want him, Arsenal want him. Gabri Viega expected to prefer Arsenal move. Like, I would actually be kind of disappointed if he went there to Manchester City, because one, they don't need to keep getting better, and I would just like him at us. Let's see. I'm checking. Celta Vigo midfield will likely join, blah, 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 which includes a release clause. Man City seem to be ready to activate. So yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. That would really suck, because he's really good, and ESR better stand up, because a lot of people were saying we shouldn't get this Gabri Viega guy because of ESR. Yeah, Richie Rabbit says Vieira will get at least one more season to find his feet. Magzino says Gundo and Silva leaving City. They need CM. City are getting Jude, though, in my opinion. Jude and this Viega guy, I don't want to start thinking about it because it's making me sick. But yeah. DeRozier says Grimaldo is great going forward, but he is sus defensively, saying that Zinni is sus defensively as well, so maybe it'd be a perfect fit. Yeah, so we'll see what Arsenal are doing. This stream was way longer than it was supposed to be, but also my internet was being ridiculous, and what else is new? But thank you guys so much for sticking with it. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is the recreated, rebranded transfer talk. So these will come out, every day basically during the transfer window, and we'll probably do at least one of these weekly from here on out, unless something big happens. But yeah, Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video beyond the technical issues. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys. I love you guys so much. You guys are the best.